listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can always listen to us and find out what's going on in the X-Zone at www.xzoneradio.com. This is Memorial Day weekend, and to all the men and women who gave service to the United States, as well as protecting us up here in Canada, along with our military forces, fighting off the worst that humanity has seen. Thank you very much, and to so many, thank you for your service and for your ultimate sacrifice. My guest this hour is Gwilda Wiyaka. She is the host of the very popular The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka. And Gwilda is in Colorado. So, Gwilda, to you and yours, happy Memorial Day. How did you spend it?
Well, I spent it in a nice, quiet way up here in the mountains, just enjoying nature. How'd you do?
Well, it was a regular work day here. This is no holiday here in Canada. We celebrate ours on November the 11th. But, you know, what can I say? We were brothers in arms and sisters in arms, and the fight still goes on today defending freedom and democracy around the world.
Absolutely it does, and I really appreciate your honoring our service people, as do I.
So tell me, a lot of people talk about gratitude, family traditions, ceremony, and the rites of passage, especially these days. We've seen pictures throughout all the media today about So many people paying their respects to fallen friends, fallen family, fallen soldiers who they didn't know, but they just wanted to pay their respects. And where do some of these traditions come from, Gwilda?
Well, to come up with that, we have to figure out that a tradition is basically a belief or a behavior that's passed down within a group or society, and it has symbolic meaning or a special significance, but the origins are in the past. So say, for instance, Memorial Day actually originated as Declaration Day after the American Civil War in 1868, and at first it was just to simply decorate graves, but over time it's evolved into a family holiday and a major tradition in the U.S., and so that's an example of how traditions begin.
Mm-hmm.
Some traditions are ancient, some are newer, like Memorial Day.
Wow. Well, how are traditions anchored in a shamanic way? Because you yourself are a shaman. You teach shamanism. You're a preceptor at the University of Colorado. So you taking off your shaman hat and putting on your educator hat, I guess, or wearing both of them at the same time. Like I asked you, how are traditions anchored in the shamanic way?
Well, the original traditions were actually created shamanically, and so what a lot of the original traditions are, and shamanism is basis in just about every nationality we have.
Right.
So all of the traditions from all the different nationalities were kind of shamanically based, and what that means is, when there was active shaman at the base of every culture, the shaman's job was to journey or go into a journey trance and align with nature and find the best time to do something. So when's the best time to plant? When's the best time to harvest? When's the best time to hunt the buffalo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when they found through these journey trances, they found a time that tended to work from time to time, they would develop traditions around the celebration or the hunt or the harvest or the whatever it was. And that's how it originally started. Then as we lost shamanism, we just held on to the traditions, but we go through times and changes, and so the ancient traditions may or may not align with what's going on now.
How can you say as we lost shamanism when so many people today are interested in shamans? You teach shamanism courses. So how can we say that lost interest?
Well, it's not a lost interest. We're actually reviving the ancient practices. But unfortunately, one of the first things a conquering nation would do when they took over society was to kill off all the shaman or the holy people, because the holy people or the shaman empowered the individual, and if you're trying to conquer a nation, you don't want that. So it's still outlawed in Siberia. I mean, it's, and in Russia. It's until the 1980s, the Native Americans here were not allowed to practice their religion.
Wow.
So it's really been targeted.
All right, stand by, Gwilda. We've got to take a commercial break here. X Zone Nation. I am Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. My guest this hour is the hostess of The Science of Magic, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I am Rob McConnell. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Star began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across a newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Star does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Star does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Star or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com. Welcome back, everyone. Gwilda Wiyaka is our special guest of this hour, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Why is it so important, Gwilda, for people to hold on to traditions no matter how old they are?
Well, the traditions, particularly the older ones, they actually take on power from being repeated and from the agreement of the participants in it. And it creates a structure for families, for societies to come into an agreement and to celebrate things that are going on or to align with things that are going on. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they have been repeated and do have power, it really helps us to focus together each time it comes up. So the other thing about is holding two traditions is, I believe in not rocking the boat until you know what makes it float. And these traditions were originally established shamanically, so there's some mysteries in them. And unless we really understand the mysteries or why and how they work, to change them arbitrarily is to disempower them.
But here we are in the year 2016. Do we really need these older traditions?
It depends on which ones. We have a need to be connected with our ancestry, mm-hmm. with our roots, with our bloodline relatives. And these traditions help us hold that continuum for our descendants as well as our ancestors. And so it really holds a continuum of the truth of what we came to bring, if you're talking about real true traditions.
In your opinion, which are the strongest traditions, and what do they apply to?
Boy, that's a tough one. Let's see. The strongest traditions. Well, the traditions that we hold that really direct our lives as far as what's the traditional way to form a family? Mm-hmm. What's the traditional way to come together as a couple? What's the tradition, those kind of things that really are the moral and guidance and framework.
Yeah, I can understand that, but in today's society with things changing, so much, the transgender, the gay rights movement. This is going against traditions, aren't they?
Yes, it is. And I don't say that that's right or wrong, but that's an example of when we have to reevaluate. If we're gay, we have to reevaluate where we stand within the old traditions, because there's a time to let go of tradition, and that's when they become dogmatic and restrict personal expression, a personal expression that doesn't hurt anybody else, basically. Seasons change and the times change, and tradition does need to be flexible within that, as long as you hold to the tried and true principles behind them.
Are traditions usually the same throughout different philosophies?
Well, there's certainly a common thread and common, what do we want to say, constituent parts, because a tradition is basically put together by something that works. And so you'll see cross-cultural traditions that we might have our own rendition thereof, but they're present in every culture, like marriage or funerals or that sort of thing.
So I would imagine that even in today's societies, as it was in past times, that I would imagine three of the strongest traditions are: number one, the baptism or bringing a child into the fold; number two, marriage; and number three, the rites of passage.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. And of course, all three of those are surrounded by ceremony as well.
What is the shamanic rite of passage?
There is as many shamanic rites of passages as there are cultures that had shamanism. But when we're looking at a shamanic rite of passage, they still do, or we still do, a ceremony, a shamanic ceremony that helps mark the time when you pass from one stage of life to another. So say, for instance, and we're lacking that in our culture and suffering for it. Say, for instance, children don't know when they're not children anymore because we don't have any real formal rite of passage. They used to have name changes. The child had a child name, and then when they came of age, they go on a vision quest and get their spirit name and choose their name that they're going to be called for the rest of their life. And that really demarked when they become adults, and the adults, their parents, are no longer parents, but they're guardians or advisors.
Well, don't we have that today when a child becomes age of majority?
We do, but without the ceremony, we don't dismantle the matrix of relationship that was established between parent and child and transform it into a relationship between mentor and adult.
I don't know about that. A lot of the people that I've seen, that I know, and members of the community, when the child goes from being a teenager to the age of majority, I see changes where the family structure actually changes, and the child is no longer looked at as a child, even though they may be a child within the family unit, but they're looked at as a young adult.
And that, Rob, really goes back to family traditions. If the family has a provision for that, even in just the way they view things, is according to age or this or that, then that transition is supported. But in our society, increasingly, we're losing our traditions, we're losing our ceremonies, and we're losing our rites of passage.
Once again, you have a high school graduation. As you're progressing from elementary school to, you're graduating from high school, a lot of people look at that as a tradition.
Well, it is, yes, and it's a rite of passage, absolutely.
So where do we draw the line, or where do we draw the distinction between what shamanistically is considered a tradition or a rite of passage compared to a sociological rite of passage?
One begets the other. And if you're doing a shamanic rite of passage, the shaman or practitioner custom designs the ceremony for the people involved based on what they want to focus on and what they want to transcend. So it's a difference between using general ceremony and, our general sociological rites of passage, or being very specific.
Would you say then that shamanic rites are a regional event? For example, would you have shamanic rites of passages within megastructures and megacities like New York, Los Angeles, Toronto? Or would you have them in the the western areas in the more rural areas?
With the resurgence of shamanism, I think that it's going to start cropping up everywhere. I mean, I'm called upon a lot to marry people or to bury people or to create a ceremony for someone to come into their moon time, or a ceremony for somebody to graduate into their adulthood. And it's really profound for the people involved because it's custom designed by aligning with the way life works at this time, custom designed for the individual. And there's a lot of benefit to that. Otherwise, we're just left using the general ones and then shifting them around to better fit us. But if we don't know what makes them work in the first place, we can kind of defuse them by that.
What would be the difference between a shamanistic funeral and a more traditional religious funeral?
Well, the only difference would be, in my way of doing it, would be someone would approach me and say, I want to have ceremony, I want to have closure, or I want you to, as a pipe carrier, to carry the spirit of my dead one for a year. I mean, it would be custom designed by the people that have approached me for the funeral. And so, okay, I'll carry the spirit of the dead for a year and then we'll release, or, that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a medicine person or a minister in seeing to the needs of the specific family in order to create the ceremony.
Why would you carry the spirit of the dead for a year?
Well, that's why I don't carry the pipe. It's because that's quite a job. But it's in the Lakota tradition. If you're a pipe carrier, one of your responsibilities is to carry the spirit of the dead for a year, and that supposedly gives the mourners time to mourn. And then when you release the spirit, their name is never mentioned again because they're afraid that calls the person back from the other side. So it's a traditional way of making sure that there's a clean crossing.
Okay, so basically, the shamanistic way of having a funeral, the soul doesn't go to heaven, doesn't go to hell, it stays within the pipe carrier.
Well, now, that's not just the shamanistic way. That was simply the Lakota pipe carrier way. There's as many different traditions as there are nationalities on the planet, so everyone's different.
Why are there so many if there's just one classification of a shaman?
Well, there was a shamanic culture. It's 50,000 years old. So there was a shamanic culture at the base of most all of our nationalities, and they developed around the needs of their particular people.
Why is it that when people think of shamans, they think of Native Americans?
I think it's because, most people that we're talking to are, in the Americas here, and so that's the first thing that comes to mind. Plus, the movies and the this and the that all feature them more than anything else because it's a Western culture.
So in your opinion as a shaman, whether you're a shaman or whether you're a member of an organized religion or philosophy that accepts the shamanistic ways compared to the established theologies or religions that we have around the world today, is there a common thread or are they all that different?
Oh, there's absolutely a common thread from one shamanic practice to the other. In fact, a gentleman by the name of Michael Harner, anthropologist, went out and submitted himself to all sorts of things, learning all sorts of different nationalities' shamanic practices. Then he kept only the things they had in common, and which was quite a surprising few, and developed what he called core shamanism. So there is a core running through the practice. And shamanism and religion are separate. So, like, I practice shamanism, and what I do is I manage matter at the quantum level. That doesn't mean I can't be a devout Christian. That would be my religion.
Okay, so you can be a shaman and a Christian at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Shamanism, or traditionally, was attached at the hip to the religion, the culture. So Celtic shamanism was attached at the hip to Catholicism, Tibetan shamanism to Buddhism, and so on.
Why?
Well, because there was a continuum between what the religion did, where it helped deal with the moral and holding the history and that sort of thing for the people, and shamanism was a healing modality designed to tend to the spiritual level, and I don't mean moral level, I mean the esoteric level or the quantum level, so to correct any imbalances or to break up bindings that we have there, in order to keep the energetic health of the people. So they worked hand in hand, really. So like your Jesuit priest that does a deep possession is both a shaman and a priest.
Stand by, we've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, Gwilda Wiyaka is my guest this hour. You can find out more about Gwilda and her show, The Science of Magic, at www.thescienceofmagic.net. I love getting your emails. Keep them coming. Exxon at exxonradiotv.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this break here in the Exxon from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Thomas Jefferson was a Burgess of 27 when he met Martha Wales Skelton, a 22-year-old widowed heiress who was fondly called Patty by her family. They were married on January the 1st, 1772, and they took up residence in a cabin on the building site on top of a Virginia mountain that Thomas had named Monticello. As Thomas and Patty slowly built their first version of the great house at Monticello, the Revolutionary War was heating up. Patty, with difficulty, bore 5 children, but only 2 girls survived. Thomas's political career developed to the point where he was often away from home, but after he authored and signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia, he resolved never again to leave his wife. He was elected the governor of Virginia, just as that state became the Revolution's last battleground. The Revolutionary War ended in 1781, and Thomas gladly retired altogether to my family, my farm, and my books. But Patty continued to want to bear her treasured husband a son, and late in the summer of 1782, she died of kidney failure at the age of 33, 4 months after having borne yet another girl. Thomas was so devastated by her death that he never remarried. He mourned her for the rest of his life, even as he helped to frame the peace in France and then became the first Secretary of State, the second Vice President, and the third President of the United States. This story is true. Thomas Jefferson was such an obsessive letter writer and record keeper that we know where he was and what he was doing nearly every day of his adult life. Every significant thing he says in My Thomas comes from his contemporary writings. My Thomas by Roberta Grimes is now available at Barnes & Noble, Costco, Target, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, Kmart, Walmart, Sam's Club, Walgreens, CVS, and online at Amazon.com. You can visit Roberta Grimes online at www.robertagrimes.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerrean intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Annie Callahan, dedicated to negotiating a position for Earth within the Daguerrean Coalition, had trained for 3 years to become an Earth ambassador. Yet, the very eve of her arrival at the capital ruling planet, she is claimed as destined mate to an oversized, mating-maddened vamp who swears he will never release her. Lord Aztaran, king of the Macian sector, has waited over 900 years for his destined mate. Having found her as an alpha vamp, he is unable to relinquish Annie, virtually holding her hostage until he can claim her. Yet Macians cannot survive without their mate's love. How could he strip her of her citizenship, her ambassadorship, and her freedom and expect to win her heart? With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is the latest book in this exciting series, The Daguerrean Chronicles, guaranteed to keep readers coming back for more. With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is available on Amazon.com and KahiraO'Donnell.com. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Mutual Broadcast Network and the X-Zone Broadcast Network and Talkstar Radio Network as well. Gwilda Wiyaka is our guest this hour. Gwilda is the hostess of The Science of Magic, and you can find out more about Gwilda as well as listen to some of her past shows at www.thescienceofmagic.com. All right, Gwilda, we're talking about traditions, we're talking about ceremony, we're talking about the rites of passage. And how would you explain to someone who is not familiar what rites of passage are?
Okay, rites of passage are anytime we are of an age or ready to or want to very consciously shift roles. We do the rites of passage like you brought up, we have a lot of provision for rites of passage in our societies, which fall into our traditions, the traditional graduation ceremony, the traditional this and the traditional that. But there are more subtle rites of passage that we may miss. And one that I ran into personally was, I am a very nurturing person, and when I brought up my children, but I also brought up several of their friends that were thrown out, and I continued to mother them to nauseam. And so one day I realized I'm getting exhausted, and I'm enabling them, and disabling myself. And so I just, performed, journeyed for a ceremony and got together with a group of my shamanic practitioners and did a ceremony to release myself from that role and to release my children and surrogate children from that role, and then to consciously step into the place of being advisor. And by doing that with public agreement, with group agreement, it made that transition much easier for me. And it made it easier for the children. So it's like when you feel like you're kind of stuck someplace that you should have transitioned out of, but you haven't, doing a rite of passage can really, really help with that transition. Because what it does on the energetic levels, it breaks down the old matrix of the old role and reestablish a new matrix for the new role.
Getting together with your other shamans or those people that you bring into a circle, how does this differ from a prayer circle that is done in many other religious philosophies?
Pretty much the same thing. We're very consciously working with frequency, but prayer does too. It's the same thing.
Okay, so how would you do that? Is it prayer? Is it the will of the intent? Is it the need of the many outweigh the need of the few? How would you explain it, and how does it work?
Well, when you get to, you mean why do we get in a group? When you get in a group, what you do is you have more than one person holding the reality of your shift, which makes that shift stronger for you because everybody's in agreement. And so that's how that works. When you get in a group to do a group prayer, you have group agreement that, the energy that you're trying to put out on behalf of someone, hopefully with their permission, that's stronger than just one person doing it. So when you have, what it says in the Bible, whenever two or more of you are gathered in my name, that's what they're talking about, that group agreement empowers the intent. The intent can be good or bad. So are you doing prayer? Are you doing rites of passage? Or are you doing sorcery? It totally depends on the intent, permission, and integrity.
But what about free will? Where does this come in? Because people have free will to do whatever they want. And what rule must those in a prayer circle follow in order not to intervene with a person's free will?
Well, the advice I give on that is to not pray without personal permission from the person you're praying for. Then you're not interfering with their free will. I mean, it might look like a perfectly good thing to pray for, like somebody returning to health, but it might be their exit point. And so to be putting all that energy, that prayer energy, towards their health might prolong their suffering. That's an example I use.
But what about the medical community when they put a person on life support? Are they not breaking the person's free will, who, based on the example you just gave us, their time may come, and by prolonging life, are they doing something wrong?
I don't necessarily do right or wrong, but I think the medical community is starting to recognize the propensity to drag someone on well past their desired shelf life, and that's why we're starting to have these living wills and sort of things, so that we know what that person's wishes are before they can't voice them.
But a living will is only as good as the paper it's written on.
I won't argue that.
And let's face it, in today's society, Big Pharma and the medical corporations that run hospitals, they are looking at the bottom line. The longer they keep you alive, the more money they make.
Amen, brother.
So where does this cross a line?
Well, I can either speak shamanically or I can speak as my personal opinion.
Both.
Okay, so shamanically speaking, again, we're working sorcery there because we are taking action directed against a person's best interest and against their personal will. That's twisting the laws of nature, and that's sorcery. Okay, personally speaking, that the exploitive way, where the dollar is more important than the individual, is absolutely abhorrent to me.
All right, so let me ask you this: in the Bible, it talks about how Jesus brought Lazarus back to life after he was dead. Okay.
Okay.
Was that right, or was that wrong?
I don't do right or wrong very well, but of course you have to realize my viewpoint on Christ is if he did it, it was probably right.
But
okay.
but wasn't he
there,
breaking his own rule or the rule of his father of free will? And what happens if his father had other plans that Christ wasn't aware of?
Those are all very good points. I really don't know.
Food for thought.
Absolutely.
What kind of archetypes are there within the shamanic community, if any?
Well, there's as many different archetypes in the shamanic community as there are shamanic communities. The ones I work with for my school are your basic, child, maiden, or warrior, mother or father, wise woman or master craftsman, a crone or wizard. And those are different stages of life. And it helps us to focus on what our role is, because we can dance in and out of those roles no matter what our age, but what's our main expression at any given time? And being conscious of that helps us be more conscious in our actions and the way we relate to people. But if you think of archetypes overall, all the gods and goddesses and all that stuff, that's all archetypes as well. So the Greek gods, the Roman gods, it's all archetypical.
Is shamanism seen by some as a cult compared to a para-religious organization or how would you describe it?
How would I describe shamanism?
Yeah.
It's seen a lot of different ways, from like we've talked before, the occult to a cult, but you don't have to have a group to practice shamanism. So that kind of kills the cult theory. And
well, I don't know about that. You've got cult practitioners who are lone wolves.
Okay, probably a difference in semantics there. But and it depends on the approach the person's taking to shamanism. You can follow a very dogmatic, ritualistic approach to shamanism. It can be very cultish. It's like anything else. It's what is your intent with it? How are you managing it? What's it for? And over the ages, it has become very cultish if you're not careful.
Why is shamanism making a comeback in the 21st century of all times?
Isn't that amazing? My belief, Rob, is that we're moving from a time of slower, lower frequency when things didn't change as rapidly. And this is what was prophesied in the Bible by the end of days. It's what's prophesied by the Mayan calendar. I could go on and on and on and on and on. Basically, we're coming into a time where our solar system is moving into a much higher charged part of the universe, which is bringing through a lot more light, and things are happening really, really fast. And they said at the end of days, time would move much more rapidly. Well, that's what's going on. And so what used to take generations to change is now changing every 17 days. Without the ability to read the quantum level and do ceremony to stay abreast of it, we're kind of like in a cement mixer here. We don't have any guidance, any control, any understanding of what's going on. And I think shamanism as a divination tool and as a balancer at the quantum level is coming back because that's its happy place. That's what it was designed to do.
How do we know we're at the end of time? Maybe time's going to move much faster at a later time, a later date, much further down on the timeline. Why are we looking at now as the end of time when this change is going to be happening?
Well, a lot of it scholastically is based on what the Mayans came up with, what people are gleaning from the Bible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hear it from all different fronts. Personally, I'm kind of from Missouri. Show me, right?
Yeah, me too.
So, but personally, I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing it in non-ordinary reality. I'm experiencing it in my life. I'm seeing the effects of it in societies, on the earth itself. And so when I experience, I don't know where we are in the continuum, but I do know that things are speeding up, and therefore we need to be on top of it. It's like, are we driving 30 miles an hour or are we driving 120? It takes a whole different driving style.
But is it also possible that with the amount of data that we're all accessible to these days, and as the speed of news reaches from one side of the globe to the other in milliseconds, that this is giving the appearance that time is moving faster when time is not moving faster. Technology is moving faster, and the rate that we can absorb information is moving faster.
That's true as well. For me, time is not. So time is a kind of a bad term to use. Mm-hmm. I would say oscillations of frequency or shifts in the way life works is what I'm registering as time here. And so both are going on, but which is driving which is the question, Rob.
How do we know that shamanism and other New Age genres are just not ways that people like to gravitate around because of the metaphysical aspect that it brings into life, that it gives you an alternative to the humdrum of daily life, daily living, daily responsibilities, the real world out there as we never knew it before?
I absolutely agree with you there. There's a lot of shamanic gatherings or shamanic practices, as there are with any other kind of practices, that are very woo-woo and hoopla and good old buddy, and we all get together and shake our rattles and jump up and down, and, oh, I think I see an image, you know.
By the way, I saw that YouTube of you on YouTube, and you jumped very high in those rattles. Wow. But why do people have that image?
Well, that's from the anthropologist viewing shamanism from the inside out and looking at the traditional practices of your more native or aboriginal tribes, where that was part of what they used to enter into the shamanic journey trance, but that wasn't what they were doing. They were simply using that method to go into an altered state. And it was misunderstood from the outside, and it was seen as very magical and sleight of hand, and you can do that stuff by putting a headset on and sitting very still. Yeah,
and plus, I really don't know many Christians who use ayahuasca or peyote to go into a prayer state.
Yeah, well, that's, in shamanism, that's the exception rather than the rule. But it's certainly becoming the big hoopla out there. It's like an excuse to go do drugs to me.
Well, you're in Colorado, so you don't need an excuse.
Yes, but I don't have to imbibe now, do I?
Oh, that's true. Where do shamanism is from the old school coming into the new. Are you seeing differences within the shamanistic community that you yourself as a shaman are saying, wow, what in the name of heavens is going on?
I am. Like everything else, when we were in the slower moving times or the darker times, everything kind of went into a state of dogma. And we saw, the time with the witch burnings and the this, and it was really awful. Christianity and everything was in a really dark way at that time and not practicing according to the teachings of the man himself. Shamanism went the same route. It went into dogmatic adherence to ritual, and it got pretty dark. And now, as we're coming out, the true practice can start to be uncovered in both. Realigning with what Christ's teachings really were, as well as being able, through shamanism, to align with the life really works, rather than be doing dogmatic ritual with agenda.
Is it possible that in the year 2016, we really do not need any type of religious philosophy whatsoever, that we should take our own reins as a human species, and instead of giving thanks to deities, give thanks to ourselves?
I'm with you on that one, and there's as many different stances to that as there are individuals. I think there'll always be individuals among us that need the ritual of religion and or shamanism to raise their frequency to connect with the divine, and there'll be the others of us that are able to get direct contact.
So are they weaker?
No, they're just holding a different rung on the ladder for us. But all frequencies have to be present for reality to exist.
But why so many philosophies then, if we're all going to the same place, heading with the same GPS location? Why do we need Catholicism? Why do we need Islam? Why do we need Christianity? Why do we need Buddhism? Why do we need shamans?
There was this beautiful story, and it was about God dividing the nations. to preserve the 4 books, and each book was sent out with a different nation. And during these times when, it was supposed to come back into a time of enlightenment, a time of holiness, the books were supposed to be brought back together. And it was our sacred job to preserve these books, but the truth would not be known until the books were reunited. And I think that that's part of what we're looking at as a possibility here, is the truth is found by putting it all together, not by separating it out and judging against it.
But we're talking about books that were written thousands of years ago. How would those books be written today with the knowledge that we have, thanks to the ingenuity of humans, not deities?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you take me along on that one?
Sure, and then we'll have to hold the answer till we come back. Okay. Very simple. Everybody is basing religion and their philosophies on books that were written thousands of years ago when humanity, mankind, did not have the amount of knowledge they have today, based on the progress made by mankind, not by deity. So how do we know, or why should we still follow those books? We'll be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
The only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. If you enjoy reading a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love From Out of the Woodwork by William S. Peckham. Sean Kennedy, a Toronto contractor, buys derelict houses, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, a century house in ruins, and starts the renovation, the house fights back. He is visited by ghosts of owners past. His visions are triggered by touching an oak mantle, reading a faded letter, opening an old locket, or opening a brand new casket in the basement. These visions will take you on a trip across southern Ontario from Niagara Falls to Toronto to Kingston. From Out of the Woodwork is now available in paperback and on your favorite electronic reader. To order your copy of From Out of the Woodwork, go to www.williamspeckham.com. That's www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Listen, if you work in an office and you're looking for some great music. Do you like New Age music? Do you like soft music that has meaning that you can relate to? www.ipbnmusic.com. That's the IPBN Music Network, 724-365. That's at www.ipbnmusic.com. Exonation, my guest this hour is Gwilda Wiyaka, and she is the hostess with the mostess on the Science of Magic, and her website is www.thescienceofmagic.net. Gwilda, always great having you with us. Where do you see shamanism and theology and other sociological philosophies going in the future?
I see them all coming together in a way that it frees the individual from dependency on them, so that we can bring it together, see the truth in each, and use it as a stepping stone to become the divine beings we were designed to be.
So what happens after we leave this planet? Do we come back?
I think there's as many different answers to that question as there's individuals leaving.
Yeah, but come on, you're a shaman. You've got a better understanding than most of us when it comes to this, don't you?
Well, I hate to admit it, but probably, because I go off planet quite a bit.
Where do you go when you go off planet?
Well, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm helping the dead to cross, I go to what we call the light, which is like, a higher frequency space, which is heading towards what we would call the traditional heaven. If that's what I'm doing there. If it just depends on what I'm doing.
Why is everything that New Agers talk about in the realm of frequencies, vibration, sound, music?
Well, I don't know about the New Agers because I don't necessarily consider myself one, although I know what you're asking. But I take it back to quantum physics and what Einstein had to say about frequency being dictating the expression of realities. And I think that that's what they're tapping into or trying to express, is that if you want to control reality, control the frequencies, the ambient frequencies, and you can do so.
If we can control the frequencies, the ambient frequencies, then why do we need religion? Why do we need philosophies? If we can do it, we can make our own ways. We don't need to be part of a gang. We don't need leaders. We can do it ourselves.
You're talking about the transition from what I call the fourth world to the fifth world, and that's what we're in the process of doing, is coming to that place where we don't need the tools to get there. We can just shift our frequency with our intent and be where we need to be and doing what we want to do.
But what about the people who don't buy into the frequency aspect of it, that they just think that when you're dead, that's it? Worm food.
It's sad. I've tried to be with people that are in the dying process, and that's their philosophy, and it's a painful thing to watch, because the absolute terror of coming to an end with no hope of any continuum is a sad thing to watch. But if you think of the basics of physics, energy is never created nor is it destroyed.
Well, you see, that's
true. We continue.
But once again, we are basing it on the knowledge we have today. This knowledge, any knowledge that we have today, may be overturned at any given time in the future based on another discovery.
Yes, the latest truth is overturned by the next latest study. I've watched this a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, listen, you and I have got to say so long for tonight, but listen, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and your show.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm on scienceofmagic.net, so that's www.thescienceofmagic.net, and they can find my past shows there. That's where we are.
All right, Gwilda, take care of yourself. Thanks very much for joining us. Exo Nation, Gwilda Wiyaka has been our guest this hour. www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'll be back on the other side of this news break at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.